It's clear that Gunn and Safran are taking an entirely different approach from the old DCEU, even if certain pieces and actors will continue forwards. But looking at new teams like the Authority and Creature Commandos, Gunn seems to again be favoring more obscure characters like he did with Guardians and the Suicide Squad. Teams and heroes he can make his own, with minimal preconceived notions of what those characters should be. Many of them have never even had live action interpretations to compare to before. That wide open potential in this new universe could make for some really fun and unexpected castings. Before getting directly into things, while it's not necessary for you to have seen my previous DC fan casting video, I do wish to quickly address something. I got like 100 comments on my pronunciation of Cavill. Henry Cavill had the perfect look and charisma to carry the role. While I think Cavill is going to be a tough act to follow, yes, this dude looks a lot like Cavill. Whoops! I had never seen this specific clip that many people cited.
Cavill is pronounced like travel. Travel. Cavill.
Maybe that mistake is evened out some by me actually nailing my Superman fan cast. I really can't take too much credit here, as the popular consensus had really nailed fan casting down to about 3 to 5 actors, and I simply picked my personal favorite from among those. Although my Hawk Girl casting has already been struck down. So I'm 1 for 2 out of confirmed castings. I'm not some wizard with deep-cut knowledge of Hollywood or any insider info, but hot damn does it feel good to get 1 right. It remains to be seen about the rest. After that first video, once the new movie slate had been revealed, basically the entire internet all at once shifted their collective Batman fan casting to Jensen Ackles. And honestly, I'm a really big fan of that pick, especially for the version of Batman they're apparently going for. It was actually really interesting to witness that swell of support for a single actor emerge seemingly overnight. Before we move too far away from talking Superman, let's get into some new castings. I'm going to start with Superman's arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor. I grew up with Clancy Brown as Lex in Superman the Animated Series, and ever since then I much prefer versions of the character that are both physically and intellectually domineering. Lex is a power-hungry, resourceful egomaniac, viewing himself as Earth's savior, which makes him such a good foil to Superman. We've seen Luthor done so many times before, but I honestly don't mind Gunn wanting to take a crack at the character this soon. If that's the story he most wants to tell, and is clearing the slate anyways, why let what anyone else has done before affect that decision? If his goal is to make this definitive gold standard Superman movie, then it kinda should be Superman vs. Lex. Gunn has said he wants his version of the character to lean a little more grounded and not end up in the campy territory we've often seen for the character before. Keywords he used for the character were threat, gravitas, and bald. No over-the-top silliness, no playing things crazy, and no wigs in order to have some unnecessary bald reveal. Instead, a dead serious, ruthless man who will let nothing, not even Superman, stand in his way. That's all music to my ears, and with the current state of the world, having the ultimate embodiment of hope and justice squaring off against a greedy, manipulative, billionaire capitalist has so much potential for telling a layered story that actually has something important to say. Probably they'll include some generic something or other or some big monster for Superman to actually punch, but I imagine Lex Luthor will be the main villain, coordinating things behind the scenes. We know Gunn likes to work with the same actors on multiple projects when he can, finding opportunities for friends and people he likes working with, specifically confirming he plans to reuse castings from his Guardians movies. I'm going to lean on that immediately here and suggest Dave Bautista as my personal choice for Lex Luthor. The guy is currently 56 years old, there's no expectation of him maintaining his current physique, but even if he slims down fairly substantially, he'll still be an enormous and intimidating man. He throws himself into roles. That dedication as an actor can be seen in characters like Drax, Sapper Morton, the Beast Raban, Duke Cody, and so many others, each wildly different from one another. showing his vast capabilities as an actor. I think given the chance for a powerhouse role like Lex, he would win over anyone who is still doubting his ability. Although, given how consistently great he is, I'd be surprised if anyone at this point could fail to see Bautista as Lex Luthor. Unless you specifically favor a different version of the character, but he fits exactly with what I want. So fingers crossed that Gunn feels the same. I am still going to talk about Superman's love interest, Lois Lane. I had already started writing this video when the casting for Superman and Lois were announced, which I did not think would be happening quite so soon, and I'll admit, I certainly did not get that one correct. Rachel Brosnahan wasn't remotely on my shortlist, but now that that's out there, I can absolutely see it. From the resilient, guarded, determined, and quietly strong Rachel Posner in House of Cards, to the energetic, hilarious, and charming socialite Midge Maisel in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Brosnahan's range is incredible, and she's just electric on screen. You need someone with that big of a screen presence to stand up against Superman. We don't want her living in Clark's shadow. And so having an actress that we know can fill the room is a really good choice. I'm not only eager to see her tackle the tenacious, resourceful, and fearless skills of Lois Lane as a reporter, but also her wit, compassion, and independence seen through her relationship with Clark. They are meant to be equal partners, supporting and inspiring one another in their own way. As brilliant as Henry Cavill and Amy Adams are individually, I never really bought their chemistry together. The fact that Lois and Clark were cast together this time gives me so much hope that their relationship is being given the treatment it deserves, as what is quite possibly the greatest romance in all of comics. I hadn't quite narrowed this down yet, but I'll share that my own top 2 picks were Naomi Scott or Jessica Henwick. I feel neither actress has yet had a quality leading role that matches their true talents and potential. But now I'm genuinely quite excited for Brosnahan in the role, and I can set Scott and Henwick aside for future fan castings. I wanted to get some actual casting discussions under my belt before talking a little bit more about that previous video, but I'll tie up a couple of loose ends there before moving on. When casting The Flash, the version of the character I presented, based on their general personality, is much more akin to Wally West than Barry Allen. Wally is the version of the character I know better, and quite possibly prefer. It's just been so long since I've actually watched Justice League Unlimited that I started to conflate the two. I kind of forgot that it's Wally in the DC animated universe. So everything I said about the character's personality and what I would want to see from The Flash remains unchanged. I'm simply sliding my pick of Joseph Quinn over from Barry to Wally West. And since they're seemingly going the route of keeping some actors through this reboot, rest in peace my dreams of Jason Momoa playing Lobo, then Ezra Miller is likely to remain the universe's Barry Allen. Although I think what they'll probably do is keep them around just long enough to pass the torch to Wally and then separate from that actor and era entirely. And one more lingering point, we had the unexpected and deeply unfortunate passing of Lance Reddick, who was my pick for Martian Manhunter. Lance was so often the standout performance of any project he took on, and will surely be missed. I've found it incredibly difficult to come up with a second choice casting of my own, as Reddick's talents are fairly incomparable. Someone suggested Isaiah Washington, and I thought that was a pretty good pick, but I think I have narrowed it down personally to Reese Alexander. He much more often plays these loud, silly, eccentric characters, so pretty well the opposite of what you expect for Martian Manhunter, but when he does play things more seriously, I feel he has the poise, determination, and especially the voice to really sell the role.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is that they're alive. And that's better than what we feared up until this letter arrived.
He doesn't have very many big roles to point to, but I feel pretty good about that pick. I don't think anyone was expecting to see Hot Girl, Guy Gardner, or Mr. Terrific in this movie, so it's hard to know what all they actually have in store. We've been told Legacy is meant to be a workplace origin story, I think that at first underwhelmed people because they were picturing just the Daily Planet movie, but I'm now realizing that means workplace as in both the Daily Planet and some version of the Justice League. We're going to get both sides. But with most of those heroes already cast, I will be focusing now on casting members of the Daily Planet and other humans in Clark's life. Although with the sheer number of pre-existing heroes that are already revealed to appear in this movie, it's hard to know how much room there will be for minor human characters, but potentially these heroes will be minor additions, and more attention will be paid to the Daily Planet. So I'll start with the major characters that everyone is expecting from that, Perry White and Jimmy Olsen. Perry White is the editor-in-chief at the Daily Planet. It sounds like we'll be getting a fair bit of Clark at work, and I expect Perry to be a fairly prominent role in this movie, directly but unwittingly affecting Clark's work life and heroing balance. He's no J. Jonah. Despite an often gruff demeanor, Perry actually openly supports Superman. White represents an old-school mindset of journalistic integrity, valuing high standards, hard-hitting stories, and the truth. He's an intense guy, pushing his reporters and demanding their best, while also acting as a mentor, showing compassion and loyalty to his staff. He also has a dry wit and sarcastic humor that can add some levity when things get difficult. He's a great character and deserves an actor who can carry his multifaceted personality. I think the most popular fan cast I've seen is Bruce Campbell, and I could absolutely see that working. That would be a really fun choice. But Bruce is maybe a hair silly overall for what I'm picturing for the character. My own top choice errs on the side of typecasting, but once it came to mind, I couldn't imagine anyone else. I'd love to see Bob Odenkirk in the role. He can play comedic and sarcastic like nobody else, but in his more recent dramatic turns, he's proven he has the chops to command the respect a character like Perry White deserves. Saul Goodman might be one of the most nuanced performances I've seen in the last decade. So while Bob often plays smarmy white-collar guys, to the extent I worry it might feel similar to what he's done before, I have the utmost confidence Odenkirk would really make the role of Perry White his own. Jimmy Olsen hasn't gotten a lot of love in recent live-action adaptations of Superman, often being sidelined, aged up, or left out entirely. Gunn seems to be aiming for complete comic accuracy, so I fully expect we'll get a younger, enthusiastic, dedicated portrayal, and more than likely a ginger. Jimmy's most important qualities are his heart, loyalty, and optimism. He's a photojournalist who often finds himself in the heart of the action, displaying feats of bravery and quick thinking in the thick of dangerous situations. He often gets portrayed as this bumbling goof, but I prefer when he's just a light-hearted guy who's still good at his job. Our Superman is already young, so I expect Jimmy to be closer to his early 20s, and generally, I'm looking forward to Clark actually having a friend. I think it's important that Superman be humanized by those around him, characters who don't know his secret and only know him as a humble farm boy in the big city. Martha and Jonathan spent a lot of time teaching Clark to inhabit this world, and to make genuine connections with those around him. It's kinda strange that we usually only see him hanging out with Lois. With Legacy emphasizing the two worlds Clark inhabits, having a believable friendship in the office outside of Lois should be a lot of fun to see play out. Someone like Matt Lintz could fit incredibly well at only 22 years old. I haven't seen him in many roles, and there's a chance he may already have commitments for future Miss Marvel projects. But who cares about that? We don't talk about Bruno. That's the correct Disney property, right? While he veers a little older than that, my ideal casting would be Skylar Gisondo. He's 26 years old and does more commonly play goofball characters with little to no confidence. But he's also played a bully in Wet Hot American Summer, showing that he doesn't have to play characters that way. Skylar has a lot of experience playing characters who need to summon their courage against all odds, which is very important for Jimmy. This character would lean into his pre-existing strengths as an actor, while also allowing Skylar to transition his career from so often playing young geeky kids to playing a young adult, finding his place in a world of literal heroes. Skylar also has flawless comedic timing and could make for a perfect comedic relief at the office. Combine that with the emotional depth he often gives his roles, and his history of sharing believable chemistry with any number of co-stars, and I think it would be delightful to see him hanging around with Clark. There is a rumor that Eve Teschmacher would appear as Lex's assistant, while others have said we'll be getting Mercy Graves. The two often fill similar roles, acting as loyal henchwomen, but I imagine Gunn will want to create some contrast by having a more timid character playing opposite Lex, rather than any scenes of their scheming then being two serious domineering figures bantering back and forth. So having Mercy Graves would risk undercutting Lex's commanding presence while work is done to establish him as a threat. Plus, Eve was created by Richard Donner for his Superman movie, so Gunn including the character here could serve as a very direct nod back to Donner's Superman. Eve is eager for approval and acts out her employer's whims without any real autonomy of her own. However, she is prone to being swayed by others, and I imagine her character will bear more of a moral compass, questioning how far Lex is willing to go. She could then show more of that vulnerability when Superman comes to put a stop to them. She'll take one look into those bright, sparkling eyes and million-dollar smile and give him everything he wants without ever putting up a fight. I think Natalie Dormer would be a great fit. As an actress, she's likely deserving of a larger role than this, but I do like that she splits the difference in age between Cornsweet and Batista. Dormer can play roles with a hardened edge, but also has a smile that can melt your heart. We need an actress you're actively rooting against, but you still kinda love her. Someone we want to want better for herself. I've found this one exceptionally hard to cast, since the character doesn't feel all that deep to me, and the casting is much more likely to go to someone fairly unknown. I'm going to cast Jonathan and Martha Kent together, but I'll still try and separate them out as much as I can. Whether they be through flashbacks or simply a visit out to the farm, we are pretty likely to get some brief inclusions of the Kent family. Although there really isn't that much room left for them with this rapidly growing cast. As someone who myself grew up in a small town and had a farmer for a grandpa, I've always felt very connected to Pa Kent. A wise, down-to-earth, pragmatic father figure who only wants what's best for Clark. Raising his adoptive son with love and guidance, teaching him responsibility, humility, and integrity, which are as important to Superman as the powers themselves. And Martha is an equal partner to Jonathan, with their relationship together showing Clark the importance of love, support, compromise, and partnership. Something he then carries directly into his own relationship with Lois. Martha carries much of the same burdens as Jonathan, needing to teach their adoptive alien son about humanity, compassion, and responsibility. She is typically the more nurturing of the two, and acts as an emotional anchor, but always done in a way that is very much complementary to Jonathan's parenting. They both want what's best for Clark, and for him to use his powers for the greater good. But it's also important to them that he make his own choices and value his happiness and well-being above all else. When casting Jonathan, I want to look past the obvious blue-collar, man-of-the-West type casts that I often see like Jeff Bridges or Sam Elliott. I'm sure either one of them could do it, but I want to focus on an actor that exudes warmth and kindness. I've heard a lot of rumors that Brendan Fraser is being looked at for the role. I'm certainly not opposed to that, and his career is on a major upswing despite the Batgirl film being tossed in the shredder. My casting choices are relatively big swings here. I try to not exclusively reach for big A-listers, but when the casting of Superman himself is relatively unknown, they might try and bolster the cast with a few more big names that can be pointed to in the marketing. I'm going very on the nose here, and I'm going to suggest Tom Hanks. Hanks has been so well liked pretty much his entire career, and for over a decade now, he's been seen as America's dad, peeing his way into all of our hearts.
Oh, it's too bad we can't demonstrate this on TV.
Congratulations. How do you feel? I gotta pay.
I don't think there's any need to overly dramatize this role. Have Tom play Jonathan with a great big smile, laughing along the way, teaching Clark humanity and love. He can also take on a more philosophical role by guiding Clark through complex moral dilemmas, and on a more human level showing Clark the value of hard work, responsibility, and the importance of keeping his powers a secret. If I were casting Martha entirely relative to Tom Hanks, I'd love to see him reunited with Meg Ryan. After several famous pairings of those two over the years, it would just be so fun to rekindle that old chemistry. But looking to Martha as an independent character, my number one pick is easily Jamie Lee Curtis. She's silly, fun-loving, authentic, and has an incredible emotional range. That's important for both Hanks and Curtis. Their ability to so flawlessly transition between carefree and raw emotion. How could you possibly grow up being raised by these two happy campers and not come out the other side the ultimate beacon of optimism? Assuming big names like this would effectively only be cameos in this movie, the sheer power of charisma of these two actors on screen would allow for us to read decades of love into their relationship and would tell us everything we need to know about Clark's upbringing in as little time as possible. We would just see these two together, sharing some laughs and love, and think, yeah, of course Clark is so hopeful and well-adjusted. And lastly, something I wasn't originally planning, I'm also going to throw out some castings for Jor-El and Lara Lor-Van, Clark's biological parents. With Gunn taking inspiration from All-Star Superman and the first synopsis revealed for this movie telling us it will be the story of Superman's journey to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as Clark Kent of Smallville, Kansas. I think it's a fairly good bet that Kal-El's parents will make at least a brief appearance. Whether that be a flashback, some recording that was sent with him down to Earth, they're gonna be on screen for like 2 minutes tops. I've seen a lot of people do these really meta castings for this, like having Henry Cavill, Nick Cage, Dean Cain, or Tom Welling as Jor-El. Those are all fun ideas, but I think they'd risk distracting a bit too much when Gunn wants to carve out his own take on the character. If people are suddenly reminded of those past performances, they're gonna check out a little bit of what David is bringing to the role. These are not two characters that I feel overly invested in, so I'm gonna just kind of bang out the castings quickly at the end here. With Bradley Cooper turning down the role of Lex Luthor, which would have been pretty great by the way, I could see Gunn wanting to still use him for a smaller but relatively significant role. And the most popular fan casting I've seen for Lara is definitely Jennifer Connelly. I just think that these two beautiful people could easily convince me that they are super intelligent higher beings from another planet. Maybe they'll have larger roles than I'm expecting, but I expect if they're used at all that Gunn will swing big and attach big names like Donner did all those years ago with Brando. Although I expect these two to be notably easier to work with. It's not unreasonable to think that the Daily Planet will be rounded out with characters like Cat Grant, Leo Quintum, Steve Lombard, or many more. But all those roles are probably going to be fairly minor and will mostly be used to add some fun, light banter to the Daily Planet workspace. The sort of role that I think Sean Gunn is probably gonna land in. Maybe they'll even include the likes of Bibbo Babowski. I mean, if we do get that character, it'll probably be Michael Rooker. I'm not gonna be very picky about any of those castings. There's so much ground to cover in this movie, they're all gonna have like one line each. So I find that all very difficult to narrow down myself. If any of you feel impassioned about any of those characters and want to take a crack at casting them, then please, I would love to hear your choices. And overall, did you like my read on these characters and the castings to match? Maybe you think I'm way off base. Please share your own below. It's loads of fun to see what others come up with and the direction they choose to take things. And if not myself, then maybe one of us can get a couple of these castings correct. The next one of these videos I do is going to be casting the Authority. I already started mapping out that video because Gunn has teased that they will be introduced in Superman Legacy, if not actually featured roles within the movie, so I want to start staking out castings there before he reveals more than I'm expecting and takes away that opportunity. Slow your roll there, James. And if I did pronounce any more names incorrectly, then be sure to let me know. It's additional comments for the algorithm, positive engagement, sure, why not? Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.